What is all going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Young Rich Podcast. Today, once again, I am back with my boy Seth. Say what's up to the people, Seth.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
We're back today with another banger today. You know, obviously NFL season started this past week. We got our first NFL Week 1 games. So we're going to go through our slates, discuss our predictions that we did have in the last episode. If you want to go check that out, the link will be in the description below as well. But we're going to be going through game by game, obviously, like we have previously discussed. The first game is obviously going to be that Thursday night football game. We have the Ravens versus the Chiefs. And I'm going to start this off real quick just because this one hit me a little differently, right? Because to me, you know, one of the biggest reasons to them why they lost was the fact that 2 times in the second half was they had 2 drives back to back where they came out here and threw the ball 6 straight times, right? And, you know, all offseason you've heard the Derrick Henry edition. You were supposed to come out here and be a hard-nosed team. You wanted to run the ball. You had an interview where Lamar Jackson says, F throwing the football, right? He wants to run the ball. He emphasized that. You've seen Lamar Jackson come out early. He was using his legs, taking a couple shots, right? It looked like they were really trying to set the tone this year and prove that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs, right? And then you get to that third quarter where the Chiefs are on top 2 possessions at that current point, and they have a bit of a lead. Your offense is a bit stagnant, right? And when you come out here and you're taking Derrick Henry out of the game, right? And you're getting Justice Hill, you're showing the defense exactly what you're getting prepared to do, right? And it bothers me so much when you have a guy like Derrick Henry and you're just not using him, whether it's as a decoy, or just getting him in there, run some play action plays, get Lamar Jackson out the pocket, you know? And it frustrates me when you just see a team not understand what's wrong. Like the same exact issues you had in the AFC Championship game, not running the ball enough, not running it down their throat, you know, not force feeding your running backs. It frustrates me because Derrick Henry was brought here to be an addition for this rushing team to elevate this rush offense to a different type of level. Him and Lamar Jackson, you've seen it early on, the first couple drives, their offense looked good. You know, it was you got a couple read options, RPOs, everything was looking good. Everything, they were playing downhill, playing fast, playing physical, right? And then the Kansas City Chiefs answered, and to be honest, after that first drive, the very next drive where they go 3 and out, you know, and then Kansas City comes back again and scores, you know, shout out Isaiah Worthy. But I mean, I really thought this game was over earlier than you know, early in the second quarter when the Chiefs went up 14-7. I really thought the game was already over at that point because you've seen the Ravens kind of panic a little bit, have a couple 3 and outs, you know, a couple missed throws. But obviously then even through all this, right, all the ups and downs and the odd way play calling throughout this game, you still had a chance to win the game, right? And then what bothers me most is Lamar Jackson walking off that field with a smile on his face, like not even necessarily a smile, but you know, that look like, oh, I left it all on the field. Oh, I was 1 throw away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs. And you had not 1, not 2, but 3 chances to go out here and throw a game tying touchdown to send into OT and to prove you could hit a big throw in the big moments, and you missed Zay Flowers, you missed Isaiah Likely. You know, again, you were 1 toe away from forcing it to OT, right? But again, like it was just too many bad plays on bad plays, getting away from your game plan. The Kansas City Chiefs clearly is just a mental block for this Baltimore Ravens team, you know. But again, it frustrates me to see how they were acting afterwards. The post-game conferences, Roquan Smith talking jazz, Lamar Jackson talking, Isaiah Likely talking, you know, it was just disappointing way to walk out to me because I thought that they kind of, you know, were the better team at the end of the day, and the fact they didn't come through with this win, you know, it just rubs me the wrong way. But big shout out to Isaiah Worthy for making plays when the ball was given to him. Obviously he scored on 1 broken play, but a touchdown is a touchdown at the end of the day. Definitely huge X factor for that Kansas City team.
Yeah, definitely. I think Xavier Worthy was definitely the X factor. I mean, scoring 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, and the receiving 1 too. I mean, he was a big playmaker for the Chiefs. He just opened up space a lot for Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. That offense is just extremely dynamic in and of itself. I feel like, I mean, my prediction of the game was kind of closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought Derrick Henry was going to kind of disappoint this first game against this Chiefs front. This Chiefs defense was extremely, extremely stout. I think the one person that stepped out to me on the defense, obviously Trent McDuffie locking down Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers had like less than 40 yards receiving, which was pretty huge.
On 6 catches. 6 catches.
Yeah, on 6 catches. Yeah, I feel like a guy that stepped up pretty well too was Justin Reed in the secondary. He came up and was really helpful in run support on Lamar Jackson and just Derrick Henry in general. I feel like the Ravens definitely threw the Lamar threw 41 passes, Patrick Mahomes threw 28. There, there's a problem when that's happening in a game when Lamar Jackson's throwing 13 more passes than Patrick Mahomes, and he still has less passing yards than Mahomes. I do, however, want to say that I don't think the Ravens offensive line kind of played really well. I feel like Lamar was pressured a lot, and that maybe more credit to the Chiefs front line and their backers because they did really well too. That whole defense just played extremely well. But also, I mean, the offensive line just wasn't there. Derrick Henry averaged 3.5 yards a rush. He wasn't seeing much on the ground. He obviously got that short yardage touchdown. But I love that Isaiah Likely had a massive game. I feel like I was so high on him last year and also just coming into this year. But I'll be completely honest with you, I didn't think he was going to get as much playing time as he did because of Mark Andrews. But obviously now, you see him, he drops 111 yards on 9 receptions as a tight end, and he's considered the backup to Mark Andrews. So, he's definitely going to get a lot more playing time in this Ravens offense, which is going to be awesome to watch. The game kind of went how I figured it would, maybe down to the last drive, like we were talking about, Derrick Henry kind of not being there, Lamar Jackson kind of taking it on as, him trying to carry the team. But I think, like I said before, when we were doing the predictions, I think if these two teams see each other in the playoffs, I think it's going to be a different story. I think the Ravens can actually pull it off in the playoffs, but we'll see because, iron sharpens iron. And by the time they get to the playoffs, this Chiefs team might be even more stout than it already is.
Yeah. And one more quick thing before we get on to the next game is that 41 pass attempts for Lamar Jackson is not the recipe for success. Like, it's just not. And for me, my issue going on to the rest of the year is when are they going to figure that out? Like, it seems like year after year we understand what Lamar Jackson is. He is definitely developed as a passer, but he has never proven that he can be the passer, that type of guy when it comes down to winning games. And that's okay. Like, it's okay not to be regarded as one of the top 5 passers in the league because there's some very talented quarterbacks out here. That's some elite competition, but just playing to your strengths, understanding what you are and how you are as a quarterback and a playmaker. And I just feel like this OC, I mean, we've seen it last year. They wanted to make Lamar Jackson change that story of him not being able to throw the football. They put the ball in his hands more, and it's just the same story new year. And I just don't know if they're going to put it together and figure it out. I hope they can, because again, this is a very exciting team defensively. They for the most part were very, very stout. They were coming up with some big time stops. The blown coverage really was like the deciding factor for this defense. But yeah, so hopefully they can put it together. But then obviously game 2, you do have the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Green Bay Packers. I believe I have Philadelphia in this one. I am not too sure, but go. Yeah, right. Perfect. Go ahead. Take this one away from me, Seth.
Yeah, this was the Saquon Barkley game, man. I mean, Saquon over 100 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then, that really, really nice catch in the end zone for a receiving touchdown as well. I feel like starting off this game, I thought it was going to go completely lopsided to the Packers. I mean, Jalen Hurts out here fumbling the ball, throwing an INT. He had 3 turnovers in the game, which was pretty huge, but they found a way to kind of claw back in there and use, their superstars on the team and, their star players like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. I mean, that 67-yard pass, that was really, really nice. And Devontae added another like 80 yards receiving. It went the way that I thought it was going to go. They just outmatched the Packers at the end of the day. They just had too many stars. And I know that Devin White didn't end up playing, but Zach Bond went absolutely insane in replace of Devin White. He had 15 tackles, led the team. He also had a couple of sacks too, which is pretty crazy in my opinion. Kenyon Mitchell did so well locking up Christian Watson.
That's my X factor right there.
Yeah, he did so well. The secondary was kind of a little bit of a question mark. They also obviously had a couple of really big plays like the Jaden Reed 70-yarder. Josh Jacobs did really well on the ground. He started out extremely slow.
6 carries for like 2 yards or something, bro. It was crazy.
It was very bad. But then he ended up with like 80 plus yards. Jordan Love, I mean, obviously, he threw that one interception to Reed Blankenship, who I think is one of the most underrated safeties in the NFL. But we'll see going forward. I just think it played how I thought it was. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be, but at the end of the day, the Eagles just outmatched the Packers. They just had more players there that whether it's big names or whether it's guys just producing, they figured it out. But going forward, I'm kind of scared for the Packers and the Malik Willis situation, how long Jordan Love's going to be out because of the injury. It's really scary. Hopefully, they can kind of lean on Josh Jacobs and he can help, open the pass up for Malik Willis. And then you obviously have Malik Willis's scrambling ability too, getting out of the pocket. But I really feel like the Packers receiving core is going to take a hit here. You got a lot of really young guys, and they're not going to have, a real pocket passing quarterback at the helm now. So it's going to be really interesting just watching Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs, kind of how they, and Dontavian Wicks. Wicks is a really good, decent wide receiver too. Uh, it'll be interesting just seeing how this offense's identity goes within the next few weeks. Who knows how long Jordan Love's going to be out? But yeah, that's basically kind of all the commentary that I have on them.
Yeah, and then they said 3 to 6 weeks. So again, we'll see how that goes. But I mean, in looking at their schedule, I mean, next week you play the Colts at home, then you have the Titans. That's a winnable game, even with Malik Willis, I would say so. You got the Vikings, who again, Sam Darnold, maybe it throws you a couple. We'll talk about him later, you know what I'm saying, my gunslinger. But then you have obviously going against the Vikings, Rams, and then the Cardinals again. So that's like a good time to not have Jordan Love, obviously, but I'm 100% with you. I mean, the X factor for me for the Philadelphia Eagles was Quinyon Mitchell. I think his addition in the secondary showed instantly, right? He did a phenomenal job. Saquon Barkley, clearly, his addition to this offense was as expected. Again, it is week 1, right? So teams still got to mesh together. I get those new pieces in. So we'll see if this is sustainable for Saquon Barkley. I was very excited to see him score this many times, especially from the situation he came in. But, I mean, listen, I think for the most part, the Packers were in this game because they are a talented team, right? But the fact that, I mean, the Eagles defense, I know they gave up 29 points, but that's a lot on Jalen Hurts. I mean, listen, 3 turnovers, you just cannot have that. 2 interceptions, 1 fumble. I think, but all 3 of those were on your own territory, So you gave the Green Bay Packers outstanding field position. And so I think that also hurt the defensive rating a little bit. But again, I mean, the huge question for Philadelphia going forward to me is still going to be Jalen Hurts. I have a 100% faith in Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. This team, even Jahan Dotson, who we didn't see anything of in this game. But I love their weapons here. Defensively, they showed up. Again, I mean, listen, Jordan Love completed about 50% of his passes, 260. You got 1 interception. You got 1 sack, 2 sacks in that game. And again, we'll see going forward. For the Green Bay Packers, obviously, Jaden Reed, big shout out to him, finally, putting it together for a big game. That's one of the younger guys that they needed to step up, and he showed up for them. And then getting into the Raiders versus the Chargers. The first game on Sunday. It's not the first game on Sunday. I don't know why that was the first one. I think it's its favorite. But we'll go through this one first. We got the Raiders and the Chargers. Obviously, the Chargers winning 22-10. And then again, I think I was the only one to pick the Raiders here.
I actually picked the Raiders too.
Did we both? Yeah. Okay, well, first and foremost, want to say big shout out to this defense. I mean, defensively, we were just making plays. And for me, the biggest addition was Christian Wilkins. I mean, his addition with Max Crosby, you've seen it instantly. We got 1 sack this game, but a lot of quarterback pressures made Justin Hurts have to run and feel very uncomfortable. A lot of quarterback hurries and quarterback hits. I mean, defensively, I really thought we were there. I mean, listen, we gave up no red zone touchdowns. Their first three possessions in the red zone, right? So defensively, we locked in, and I get it. The Chargers have no receiving threats to know of, right? Other than Quentin Johnson, who finally held onto the ball a couple times. But defensively, again, that was our point of emphasis this offseason, and we held through defensively. I mean, listen, the Chargers scored on their last 2 possessions, sure, but it came off of 2 just broken plays where we sent absolutely everybody to try to get the offense back on the field, and then just, it just happens that way. There's an open hole, cut back lane, and boom. And Gus Edwards, I believe, J.K. Dobbins, was accountable for 2 of those big runs. But other than that, I mean, it comes down to the quarterback play, obviously, and a lot of just the inability to make big plays, the inability to extend plays using his feet. And we know that's going to be the struggle for the Raiders this year, obviously. I like how the ball was being spread around. Brock Bowers was getting his touches. Jacoby Myers was getting included early on. Zamir White, 13 carries, 44 yards. Second half, it was getting a little bit more active. But again, this one hurts. I mean, listen, you have 2 fumbles, you have 1 interception, 3 turnovers in this game that just absolutely killed us. A missed field goal. Again, there's just so many opportunities to win this game, and this could have been a different story. But again, you get the results that you paid for, and paying for Gardner Minshew at quarterback in our type of situation, was it the best idea? Maybe not. Am I still a little bit optimistic? Sure, right? But I think if we want to be any bit successful this year, we're going to have to have offensive production running the ball. Zamir White, somebody's going to have to be able to run the ball successfully. I mean, offensive line-wise, we did look like Khalil Mack and Bosa was getting after us. I mean, that Jackson Powers will be healthy for next week. Second-round pick out of Oregon. And heard a lot of great things out of him from training camps. One of the highly regarded offensive lineman rookies this year.
I wanted the Steelers to draft him.
Yeah, so and then we also didn't have Malcolm Kuntz, who's placed on IR for the first 4 weeks. Our first-round pick last year, Tyree Wilson, who we're expecting a bigger, better year this year from him. So with all that being said, I'm okay with it, right? Am I optimistic going forward? A little. Always am, just because that's how delusional I am, right? But we'll see how it goes. It was obviously a heartbreaking Sunday for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it kind of boiled down to was just the turnovers for the Raiders, and didn't Carlson also miss a field goal too somewhere in there too? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like even watching it and seeing like the Raiders losing real time, I'm like, how is this happening? Like Justin Herbert isn't doing anything. It was all just big plays from J.K. Dobbins, like the 135 yards rushing. It was crazy. I mean, Ladd McConkey, sure, he caught a touchdown, but like no one on the Chargers had more than 40 yards receiving. And Herbert threw for less than 150 yards. So it was really like watching, like I'm like, yeah, it was the turnovers for the Raiders. I mean, the missed field goal, and then just like the run, like they just need to be able to stop the run. And I wouldn't even say like stop the run, because Gus Edwards had like 11 carries for 20 yards. So it was those big chunk plays that J.K. Dobbins got that I feel like that's the only reason why, like put him in field goal territory or put him in the position to be able to score a touchdown. But I mean, 9 of their points were from field goals. And then they had 3 turnovers go in their favor. And then they had that little short pass for a touchdown to Ladd McConkey. So honestly, like it was a weird game to watch. Weird in general. I just felt like the Raiders did a lot more on offense than the Chargers, yet they lost by more than 1 possession. So, I mean, it was just a weird game in general. I think kind of the predictions the prediction that I kind of made was like Justin Herbert's they're going to implode on offense. I feel like if J.K. Dobbins did not carry the load, they did implode on offense. I mean, Herbert didn't even throw for 150 yards. It looked like he was throwing checkdowns every single play. He has no weapons whatsoever. I don't know who they play next week, but I feel like it's going to be a lot of the same.
The Ravens? The Chargers. You're talking about the Chargers? Oh, I don't know who the Chargers play. No, but the Chargers. We play the Ravens.
But so we'll see how this kind of Chargers offense continues to develop. But I mean, if J.K. Dobbins can put it down like he did week 1, which I highly doubt, they'll be in an okay position if they have to, go run heavy. But yeah, it was just a weird game in general to me.
Yeah. And then for the record, they play the Panthers next week. The Chargers do. But I mean, yeah, for those who didn't watch the game, I know if you look at the box score, you're like, damn, J.K. Dobbins had an amazing game. But it literally came off in the fourth quarter. The last 2 Chargers drives, 3rd down on both plays he made, and he just broke one. He broke a 61-yarder, and then the very next drive, he sealed the game with like a 40-yard run. So it happened late, but again, it happened, right? So credit to those guys. We'll get into the next game. We got the Buffalo Bills versus the Arizona Cardinals, who we both picked the Bills to win, right? This one, I mean, you texted me as soon as it happened. We're talking a Arizona upset. Kyler Murray looks phenomenal. You know, this Arizona Cardinals team looks great. Josh Allen is still turnover prone, but 17-0. Here comes Josh Allen climbing, and here they come, and obviously ending up with a 34-28 victory. For me, my X factor has got to be James Cook, to be honest, because I just think he gives them so much great production out of the receiving game, running the ball, right? He loses a bit of touches due to the fact he's next to Josh Allen, but I just think he's a great player for this team. And then big shout out to the Cardinals. Like, I don't really got much to say. Arizona, I mean, obviously there's still questions there defensively. We know that, we know there's still like room to grow. We know this is not a 1-year rebuild, right? Under the Kyle Murray getting healthy again. But I mean, yeah, man. I mean, I have really nothing really to say. Kyler Murray played okay. Did he play great? No. There's still some questions about him being able to throw the ball, right? So, playmakers wise, I mean, Trey McBride had a okay game. He had a couple receptions for about 30 yards. Other than that, Marvin Harrison Jr. was the one that really shook. Yeah, because I mean, listen, one catch for what? 4 yards, 3 targets. To me, you've got to get him involved, right? There is just that is your guy. That is the guy of the future. That is like from late history, the last 15 to 20 years, he is one of those guys that is solidified going to be a great NFL player. Like, there's no doubt in our minds. That's how highly graded he was coming out of college. He's the only Ohio State wide receiver to be a back-to-back All-American, right? In that loaded receiving room in the last 5 to 8 years, right? So, to me, you've got to find a way to get him involved, right? We've seen the clips in minicamp. We've seen how great he is as a player, as a playmaker, but you've just got to force feed him the ball, right? And I get it. It's going to be a learning curve for him and for Kyler Murray to develop this relationship, this chemistry, but they've got to get him involved. You spent too much high of a draft pick on him, right? You had the opportunity to trade back, go do something else, go defense, whatever, but you had to go in there. You just have to get him involved. There's no reason your number one, your 4th overall pick should have one catch. Okay, he's too good. He's too damn big. He's a great route runner, you know. So to me, you've got to find a ways to get him involved, and that's definitely going to help you, you know, close out some of these games.
Yeah, I feel like it was exciting. This was a really exciting game to watch. I feel like the Cardinals had closer of a shot to win this game than a lot of people think. I feel like that fumble that they lost when Kyler Murray got sacked, I believe it was like at the end of the 3rd quarter, was kind of like a turning point. But if I'm a Bills fan, I'm really happy about this because it kind of showed the fight that the Bills team has. I mean, they went down pretty fast. And, you know, the tides turned pretty quickly when the Cardinals, you know, went down and scored a touchdown, and then Josh Allen fumbled in the pocket. But if I'm the Bills, I'm kind of excited because, you know, we were talking a lot about just Josh Allen not having that many like legitimate weapons, but he came out here and he threw the ball to 9 different people, which is a big deal. Khalil Shakir did pretty well. He's technically their wide receiver 1. I guess 1A, and then Keon Coleman's 1B. But Keon Coleman did really well too. I mean, 51 yards on 4 receptions was pretty well. Shakir caught the 20-yard or 19-yard touchdown.
Did you see his touchdown? Did you see his touchdown when he rolled in the end zone? That was crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It's just a little. He landed on his head, and then he was like reaching, and then he like just. That was crazy.
But I mean, the X factor, obviously, I mean, you took James Cook. That was my X factor too. And I'm not obviously going to pick Josh Allen because that'd be kind of boring. I'll throw out a name. I'll throw out Terrell Bernard there. He's a Baylor alum. He's their middle linebacker. He's been their starting middle linebacker the last few years now. He had 11 tackles, 10 of them were solo. I feel like with the loss of Matt Milano for this defense, he's going to have to step up and step up big. And he's an absolute dog. I mean, he set the precedent for the season. I think they're going to be pretty good against the run. James Conner was pretty solid for the Cardinals. I feel like for, you know, the production that he gave, I mean, 16 carries, 50 yards, a touchdown. He had 3 receptions, 33 yards as well. He was their second leading receiver, and, you know, he was their second leading rusher, obviously behind Kyler Murray. But I feel like he was one of those guys where they could kind of just lean on him when they needed something, when they just needed some conservative yards. I feel like the Cardinals are not going to win if Greg Dortch is their leading receiver every single week. Who is Greg Dortch? I don't know, but good for him for having 6 receptions for 47 yards. I feel like I wanted to see Trey McBride I wanted to see Trey McBride utilized a lot more, but he had 9 targets and only 5 receptions. So I didn't actually watch the game. I don't know if he was blanketed and covered really well by those linebackers of the Bills, or if there were a couple of drops in there, things
A couple
like that.
missed throws, just missed throws.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to see more of Michael Wilson, whose only catch was a touchdown. But I really like Michael Wilson. I'm high on him too. But the big disappointment was obviously Marvin Harrison. He had a pretty bad drop. I believe his 3 targets, 2 of them were back-to-back plays, like in the first half too. One of them, the first one, he had like a little curl dig route, like for like 15 yards, and he just like blatantly dropped it. I think it was just jitters. And then the next play was kind of just a little dump off pass in the flats that he got 4 yards on. And then the rest of the game, like second half and everything else, he only had 1 target, and I don't even know what that target was. But I know a lot of people saw there was a play towards the end of the game. I don't remember when it was, but Marvin Harrison Jr. was kind of streaking down the sidelines. He was wide open. Kyler Murray didn't throw the ball. I don't know if he was under duress in the pocket, if he was getting rushed or whatever, but I saw that clip on Twitter. I saw Marvin Harrison wide open for a touchdown. And that was kind of, it was kind of, you're grimacing. That leaves you a bad taste in your mouth if you're a Cardinals fan. But if I'm being honest, I'm happy for both teams. I feel like if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm happy that we played the Bills literally so well. And yet I feel like the Cardinals didn't even play their best game.
They didn't.
And then if I'm the Bills, I'm really happy because that this team has fight and they have grit, and you don't have to worry about Josh Allen not having too many stars or weapons on his team, because he's going to make it happen no matter what. But that's kind of just my breakdown of the game there.
Yeah, and then just for you fantasy football heads, Greg Dortch is going to be one of the greater sleeper picks this year, especially because you got him off I got him off the waiver wire. I told a couple friends to get him off the waiver wire for absolutely nothing. All right, he's someone you could stash in there. I knew he was going to have a good week 1, right? That's exactly what happened. So if you don't know who Greg Dortch is, now you do. All right. But getting into the next game, we have the New England Patriots obviously beating the Cincinnati Bengals 16-10. Okay, and this one, I'm gonna go over the graphic that we just previously discussed. Let me just pull it up real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Joe Burrow's record in weeks 1 and 2 as a starter is 1-8, 63% completion percentage, 5 yards per pass, 220 yards per game, 12-9 TD to interception ratio. Weeks 3 through 18, 28, 15-1, 69 completion percentage, 279 yards per game, 7.8 yards per pass. And this one, to me, this is just one of those games. It's just like, it's unacceptable, right? Because these are with how tough your division is, right? Playing the Ravens, you have the Steelers, who are just great defensively. Joe Burrow statistically is not great against the Browns. He's not statistically great against the Baltimore Ravens, right? Or even his division in general, right? And so every week counts, especially when you're talking about all offseason, right? You're talking about you want to come in here, you want to start competing for championships again. You want to make it back to the Super Bowl. You want to be the ones to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. You have Jamar Chase sitting out. He's seen CeeDee Lamb get paid, so he started sitting out again. And now he comes out here. Now you have no T. Higgins before the game. You need Jamar Chase to step up. And it just was an absolutely sloppy game. I don't know what it is, because also, listen, Ramondre Stevenson ran the ball for 120 yards. These guys came out here, ran the ball for 25 times. He absolutely just carried them to a victory. Defensively, they played great. Christian Gonzalez made some key plays. Defensively, I don't know if we should credit the New England Patriots for being good or for the Cincinnati Bengals for being so bad, because we've seen this before. Last year they started the year 0-3, 0-4 for Cincinnati, and then they came back and won 4 out of the next 5. So eventually you've got to get your stuff together, because these are one of the easiest wins you're going to have on your schedule that you should have. That should just give you an easy 1-0 start to the season. And then you should go into next week, try to go 2-0, because again, your division is too good. Nothing's guaranteed in your division. Joe Burrow's health, you don't know what's going to happen with him, so I don't know. This whole Cincinnati team was a fucking mess, to be honest. Defensively, you weren't there, right? And I know this is a team that later second half of the season, post week 8, you kind of get better defensively. You're better. You're there. You're locked in. You're making plays. And then once you get into the playoffs, your team completely changes. You become a top 5, top 3 team at one point in the playoffs, right? So to me, it's just being more consistent, because you cannot keep starting the season like this and expecting everything to be okay, right? You've seen it last year. You start off with a slow start. Yes, it was Joe Burrow being injured, right? But then you had to crawl yourself through hell, play perfect football for 4 to 5 weeks just to give yourself a chance to make the playoffs. And it's not a healthy recipe. It's not a recipe for success. You know what I'm saying? You want to get that home field advantage. You want to have that first round, that first seed where you can have a first round bye. You want those things to help you get to the Super Bowl, right? And for me, it's just consistency. You cannot have situations like this, especially when the New England Patriots are playing Jacoby Brissett, who only threw 421 fucking yards, right? This is just absolutely unacceptable. And that's all I got to say about these guys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this game brought me a lot of joy being a Steelers fan, watching the Eagles lose to the Patriots. I thought this game was going to be completely different. I didn't even if Jamar Chase didn't even play, the T Higgins thing kind of threw me for a little bit of a swirl that he didn't play. But man, like, I credit Christian Gonzalez because, I mean, obviously Jamar Chase, 6 receptions, 62 yards. He held Chase under 100 yards, no touchdowns. That's always a W in my book. Christian Gonzalez is going to be an absolute star in this league. That Patriots defense did so well. I feel like just watching the offense, there was a lot of like just dunk down passes from Joe Burrow, a lot of just like, I don't know what this offense's identity is. It's kind of like just the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase show, but then they don't really have a run game to go back on. I mean, Zach Moss played pretty well, like pretty decent. He had 9 carries, like 40-something yards and a touchdown, but they kind of just ran away from that. Man, Ramondre Stevenson was my X factor. I mean, he was the best player on both teams that played this game. I mean, 120 yards, a touchdown. He carried that Patriots team to a win with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. But the shocker to me in this is that Jermaine Burton didn't even get a target this whole game, which to me, I mean, he popped off in the preseason with T Higgins not playing. I figured he would get at least a target. I don't know if he actually like even saw the field. I didn't watch the game thoroughly, but he didn't get a reception. He didn't get any yards. He didn't get any targets. And for me, he's the wide receiver 3 after T Higgins. So it was really shocking kind of not seeing him either see the field, touch the field, or, just not getting any targets or maybe separation if he was on the field. Who knows? But yeah, this is really disappointing for Bengals fans. I mean, I would be pretty distraught after this. I would be pretty worried. Not too worried though, because T Higgins coming back next week. Joe Burrow. Maybe that whole graphic. Maybe they just start out the season a little slow like they usually do. But the AFC North is so competitive. It always comes down to the last few weeks of the season.
Every time.
Who's going to win the division? And losing this game is going to hurt the Bengals so bad once we get to the end of the season and maybe they're a game back of the Steelers or the Ravens, or, they're tied for first place, but they lost to the Patriots, man. It's going to be, this one's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth the rest of the season. Hopefully they bounce back from it. But yeah, I really need to see more out of Joe Burrow. I mean, that was just sad to watch. I feel like he was playing really conservative. It was kind of like their longest play of the day was a 28-yard pass, which I feel like it's long, but I mean, all the other ones besides that, 13 yards, 12 yards, there's no chunk plays. When you're thinking of the Bengals, you're thinking of, chucking it to T Higgins downfield, Jamar Chase, 50, 60-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just can't believe they lost to the Patriots. I mean, this was really, really sad, but made me happy. So
very, very fucking sad indeed. But it is what it is. Then we got the next game. We have the Minnesota Vikings going against the New York Giants. I'm not sure who picked Minnesota in this one.
You did, and I
did.
Picked the Giants.
I did, right? There you go. I thought I did, but I thought I didn't because I told you Sam Darnold was going to be back, and that's exactly what happened. Huge shout out to Sam Darnold, my GOAT of the day. All right, he was the one USC quarterback that didn't fucking disappoint me this Sunday. Okay, big shout out. I mean, 19 for 24, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. Right, Aaron Jones had a great game on the ground. He got Justin Jefferson involved. He got Jordan Addison involved before Jordan Addison left with an injury. Right, and one of the biggest things for me was I was like, wow, look at Sam Darnold is back. We are seeing peak prime Sam Darnold from USC. He is back. And the very next play, he throws a pick. And then I was like, damn it, he is still.
The pick wasn't even like a bad pick. It
No,
wasn't really his
I
fault.
get it. No, I get it. But it was just like like I'm sitting there. I'm like, no, not again. Like but I thought he was gonna throw another one, but he didn't. He held on. He settled down. He ran the ball and closed out this game. So huge shout out to him and this team. Again, I mean, there is nothing sweet to say about the New York Giants. I mean, their defensive line, great. Love it, right? Adoree Jackson defensively. Other than that, I don't know who you really have. You have a lot of young guys you're trying to fit in that room. So you have to figure something out. But I mean, listen, Daniel Jones, I've defended you for a majority of your career, right? Saying that you didn't have any good weapons. You didn't have any great supporting pieces. Terrible offensive line, terrible receivers, other than Saquon Barkley, who you guys both need good offensive linemen around you. So, again, Malik Neighbors, 5 receptions, 66 yards on 7 targets. I think he was definitely pissed off after this game, especially getting involved early on and not getting any more touches for the second half, majority of the second half of the game. But, I mean, listen, throwing the ball for 42 times, 186 yards, 2 interceptions, were sacked 5 times is just not good at all. And some of these interceptions were just very, very piss poor. Like, not even close, not even giving your guy a chance to make plays. I have absolutely nothing good to say about the New York Giants at this current moment. Huge shout out to Sam Darnold, though.
Yeah, I feel like, going back on my predictions, I don't know why I picked the Giants. Maybe it was just kind of like, smoke and mirrors. But Sam Darnold played really well. I feel like that interception towards the end, too, it wasn't really his fault. The huge thing, too, was they had a really good run game. I mean, 90-plus yards for Aaron Jones on minimal carries with a touchdown. And then they've got a decent amount of weapons there. Shout out Johnny Munt too, who got a couple of receptions for 15 yards. He's a Central Catholic alum.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll say this: that Vikings defense played so well. Harrison Smith's like 40 years old, but he's still getting in there. He's an absolute menace. He had an interception and like 7 tackles as well. Byron Murphy, the addition to their team. I think he's been there a couple of years now. He came from the Cardinals, but I love Byron Murphy. I think he's going to be a really good corner for just the future of the
Forgot
league.
he was there.
Griffin too, and they signed Stephon Gilmore too. So that defense is maybe one of the more slept on defenses in the NFL. They also had their first round pick Dallas Turner get his first sack of his NFL career, which was really exciting to watch. The only kind of like, precaution, like scary statistic that I'll throw out there is Jefferson had 59 yards receiving. 44 of those came on 1 catch. So besides that, he had 3 catches for 15 yards. Obviously the box score is going to show 59, but before that, or just taking that into account, hopefully I'm really hoping Sam Darnold can just replicate what he did. I don't know how great this defense is for the Giants. I think the defense was absolutely horrible. I don't know who the Vikings play next week, but hopefully he can reproduce the numbers that he did this week, and then just keep the turnover numbers down, because I know if the Vikings do lose, it's going to be a huge thing on Sam Darnold's shoulders just to not throw interceptions. That's going to be a huge thing. And for them to just be able to keep sustaining this run game so it opens up the passes over the top, just like that 44-yard pass for Justin Jefferson. Going on to the Giants, man, Daniel Jones is not it. They need to move on, man. I'm already ready to kick him to the curb. I remember a couple episodes ago, I remember saying that I wouldn't be shocked that like by week 3, they bench Daniel Jones and they throw in Tommy DeVito. I remember saying that just because Giants fans love Tommy DeVito. But I mean, absolutely no run game. The Giants deserve this game after letting Saquon Barkley leave and saying we're not paying Daniel Jones $40 million or whatever, however $1 million to hand the ball off. And Saquon literally had more rushing yards than the Giants' whole team combined. It was just, it's beautiful to watch, man. And my only bright spot, and another thing too, Kayvon Thibodeau for the Giants, their first round pick a couple of years ago, really, really high pick, didn't even record a tackle. He was horrible this game. I mean, he didn't do anything. Last year, very, very good last year. I thought their pairing, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, was going to be a huge thing. Brian Burns had a few tackles, no sacks at all. They had almost no pressure on Sam Darnold. That Vikings offensive line was great. Dexter Lawrence got a sack, sure. But I figured there would be a lot more pressure on Sam Darnold with Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari is even pretty decent, Dexter Lawrence, and even just Brian Burns, the addition of Brian Burns. I thought that defense was going to do so much better just getting to the quarterback, but they didn't. The only bright spot for me was Malik Neighbors. And I mean, Daniel Jones being as horrible as he was, still being able to produce 5 receptions for 66 yards and just not get that many looks. You know what I mean? It was that's the only bright spot, Malik Neighbors. Other than that, everything else was just horrible, and I would hate to be a Giants fan.
Yeah, and just a huge shout out to, like you said, Minnesota's offensive line, because they do have 2 great tackles, right? Absolutely great tackles, young tackles. Just extended one of them. But I mean, who are we just talking about right now? Oh, the Giants. Yeah, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are both in the same category of players, right? You draft them very, very high regarded. They've already proven, like just through minicamp, OTAs, contact practices, mixed practices, all that stuff, that they are elite at what they do, right? And they can be great at this game at this level. But you just got to force feed them the ball, okay? Just got a quick game, throw some screens, something. Just put the ball in their hands and let them make plays. And I think hopefully it'll get better as the season goes on, you know. But I know Malik Neighbors is a guy that wants the ball in his hands. And in a situation where you have absolutely nothing producing on offense, you've just got to force feed him the ball, right? And hopefully they do that going forward. But the next game, we have the Tennessee Titans versus the Cleveland Bears. Did you pick Tennessee?
I'd pick the Bears.
Okay, cool. Because I know there's people talking about Tennessee was gonna go in there and ruin, Caleb Williams' debut, which they almost did. Let me tell you, they almost did. I mean, listen, coming back 17-0, obviously getting 3 points for the half and ended up winning. Obviously, again, Will Levis basically gave you this win if you're the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams did not come out. 14 for 29, 93 yards was not it. DeAndre Swift, 10 carries on the ground, 30 yards was not it. DJ Moore had a couple catches. Keenan Allen had a couple catches. Rome Odunze, hopefully he gets healthy soon. He just got placed on IR today. Cole Kmet, only 1 catch. To me, that's a bit unacceptable. Jalen Johnson did what Jalen Johnson did. This defense was absolutely great. You had a special teams touchdown, right? They held Calvin Ridley, Will Levis, and this team to the very bare minimum. Tony Pollard was actually the only person who gave solid production for 82 yards and a touchdown. But for me, the biggest part of this, obviously, listen, Caleb Williams, did he miss some throws? I can give you 3 on the first drive that he missed, right? 2 to Keenan Allen in particular. Okay, 1 to somebody else. I don't even know who he is because he's like a 4-string receiver. But yes, Caleb Williams missed a lot of throws. Yes, Caleb Williams maybe held onto the ball a little too long, was too indecisive whether he should try to use his legs and then extend the play and look for somebody downfield or just take off and run. I wish he would just, commit to running the ball more when he's already outside the pocket and nothing's there, right? He's looking too much for the big play and just sometimes he's got to take what the defense gives him. But the biggest thing to me was last year, the Chicago Bears were a top 5 rushing offense in football. And I know that had to do with Justin Fields being a running quarterback, but when you were that good running the football last year, you have to stay true to what you are. And DeAndre Swift is a more than capable back. He's a underappreciated back, but I love what he does. You still have Khalil Herbert, who gave you 750 yards last year on that team. And I think the whole thing going forward is you have to run the ball. You have to stay true to who you are. You've been a good rushing offense the last 2 years in Chicago. And now that you have these great receiving weapons, I get it. You want to show some big plays. You want to show why you drafted Caleb Williams, why you traded for Keenan Allen, why you drafted Rome, why you traded for DJ Moore, right? But you have to stay true to who you are. Make it easier on Caleb Williams. Run the ball. Open up the play action. All that stuff. To me, they just look like they were trying to do way too much too early. And again, all the rookie quarterbacks to me played poorly week 1, right? So I get there's that even CJ Stroud last year, that first 3 to 4 weeks, you're still figuring things out, right? So I understand it's a learning curve for Chicago, for Caleb Williams, right? So I expect him to continue to get better week by week. I'm buying in on him. Week 6, week 7 is really when he hits his stride and starts showing us some big time plays and looking like a legitimate quarterback in the NFL. But again, when you have a young quarterback, I prefer to be able to run the ball, right? Because it opens everything else up. It makes it easier. It takes some of the stuff he has to do off his plate. It makes it easier to play the quarterback position.
Yeah, being honest, seeing just box score watching for the Bears and just seeing the box score at the end of the game, this literally looks like a Matt Canada run offense. They had 6 different people run the ball and there's like 3 of them are wide receivers, like on end arounds, or you got DJ Moore with a 1 carry for 14 yards, Velus Jones for 2 carries for 11 yards, Travis Homer, and then Khalil Herbert, and then Caleb ran the ball, and then DeAndre Swift. Like 6 different guys running the ball. Just stick to Caleb, maybe Khalil, and then DeAndre Swift. Like I get it, Velus Jones had like a massive rushing game in like the preseason or whatever, but he's a wide receiver. He's like a skinny guy. He's not actually get production. But like just dinking and dunking everything. It was their longest pass of the day was 13 yards to DJ Moore. It was a lot of checkdowns. It was a lot of, and I mean, less than, 50. I will say this, less than 50% completion percentage, but I will say this. He didn't turn the ball over.
He didn't. And he's not going to. He's not going to.
That's the reason, and that's the reason why the Titans lost. Because Will Levis 3 turnovers. 2 interceptions and a fumble. Tony Pollard played so well for them. They should have.
My fault. Hold on. Sorry. Did you see the last one that he threw?
Mm-hmm.
Where he was getting sacked and it just flat. Oh my god.
Very, very bad. very.
I was like,
it was a Daniel Jones moment in my opinion.
It was bad.
Calvin Ridley, 50 yards receiving. I mean, everyone else was kind of like a non-factor. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't out there much. He didn't really put in any production. Neither did Tyler Boyd, but Tony Pollard kind of carried that offense and just kept them relevant, if anything at all. I mean, on my X factor personally for the Chicago Bears is TJ Edwards, their middle linebacker. He had 15 tackles. He was absolutely insane. Just the field general of that defense, just absolutely heading it. And he was just flying around the field, sideline to sideline, and he was just doing very, very well. Obviously, they had Darrell Taylor too. I believe he had a couple of sacks. He played pretty well too. But TJ Edwards is my X factor in the game. I don't think anyone on offense really made a huge difference. But yeah, this was a very weird game to watch. It was definitely not how I expected it. I thought Caleb's was going to go, for at least 200 plus. And then maybe DJ Moore, like 70 yards receiving, maybe Keenan 50. No one went over 40 yards receiving, and the longest pass of the day was, 13 yards. That was definitely not in my bingo or definitely not in my, bingo checklist. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird game. Like a lot of these week 1 games with the whole, like having a week after the 3rd preseason game just to practice or like relax, and there not being 4 preseason games and people not playing their quarterbacks or their offenses or defenses in the preseason. All these week 1 games are so weird because guys just haven't played against real competition. And obviously they have the joint practices and stuff like that. That's days of a difference than actual games. And I feel like this first week I saw so many field goals, like so many. I think
nobody can score.
Kickers, I think like I saw like 3 different kickers kick 6 field goals in a game.
Houston was one of them, I think.
Yeah, Houston, the Steelers, Chris Boswell, and then last night the Niners. Or wait, no, was it the Niners? I think it might have been someone else, but
no, it was there. I was gonna say the Chargers kicked 3, I think, against us, but I don't know who that.
I don't know. I think it was 3 teams that kicked 6 field goals though. But yeah, it was just like, Jake Moody kicked 6 field goals. So it was the Steelers, the Texans, and the Niners kicked 6 field goals, which is insane to me. That hardly happens ever, and 3 kickers did it week 1. And I feel like it was just weird. It was just
lack of preseason, bro. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. Like Jalen Hurts, 3 turnovers, lack of preseason. You know who looked good in
Aaron Rodgers.
100%.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will get to that. But like even like you saying, like CJ Stroud played in the preseason, played a couple games. Patrick Mahomes played in the preseason, played a couple games, looked great. Lamar Jackson didn't. Struggled a bit. All right. So there's a lot to say to all of that stuff. But getting into the next game, obviously we have my second glorious king in the NFL and who I still stand by to this day, Bryce Young, and the Carolina Panthers getting absolutely blown out by the New Orleans Saints. And this one was absolutely so hard for me to watch because I've been so huge on Bryce Young taking a huge jump this year, right? I respect New Orleans as a defense. I mean, their defense has been together for a very long time. It's just a tough veteran defense at home as well. You know, they get that little home advantage boost. So I thought it was a tough week one for Bryce Young, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. Let me tell you, every time I'm trying to click on and I'm trying to sit here and watch him play, it's a 3 and out. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, I can't even watch him play because it's 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. And listen, there's a couple times Bryce Young gets sacked where it's just the running back literally goes the wrong way on pass pro, does not pick up the blitz. So I will give you some of those plays, but Bryce Young, you just need to be better. I get it. Your offensive line is not perfect. You added to your offensive line is not as bad as last year. You didn't get Deontay Johnson involved until late in the second quarter, somebody who I am very high on as well. Like, I think you and Bryce Young and Deontay Johnson could be great together. You've got to figure it out. But this was absolutely terrible. You know, like, defensively, we knew you were going to struggle. You don't have Brian Burns, you know, a healthy J.C. Horn, but you did lose Frank Louvu as well. You've just been losing pieces off that defense for the past couple of years due to how poorly you've been as a team. But, I mean, listen, just as soon as you start to get any sort of momentum, you have a Jonathan Mingo fumble, right? 47-10 is going to leave a very sour taste in your mouth. Next week, you play the Chargers, who we just seen what happened against the Raiders offensively. You know, we'll see how that all comes together, like how they can perform, how Bryce Young can answer. I mean, listen, Gardner Minshew went out there and threw for 250 yards and a touchdown. You know, hopefully you could replicate some sort of success like that. But, I mean, the Saints, Derek Carr was Derek Carr, whatever. When you're going against one of the worst teams in football, of course Derek Carr is going to look good, right? Alvin Kamara, I mean, again, just dominated today. I mean, the big one for me is going to be Rashid Shaheed. I think that was like the biggest guy. He got him on the board early, and he's just been that big playmaker for them even last year, right? They brought him back on a deal, and he came through and performed. I love him there. Chris Olave only getting 2 targets. I mean, again, you blew him out, so I kind of understand what happened there. But defensively, I mean, again, it's the same old defense for me. Marshawn Lattimore did Marshawn Lattimore things. Kool-Aid McKinstry showed some flashes as well. I mean, they have a very good young secondary as well. But there was nothing much I took from this game. I still think both teams suck.
Yeah. I mean, just watching this game in general, I'll be honest, it was exciting. I loved it because I'm a huge fan of Alvin Kamara. I'm also very much financially invested into him. He's my X factor for this offense because last year when he was so good back in the Drew Brees era, before, you know, Derek Carr came in, you know, he was like one of the best running backs in the NFL. They have a new coordinator. They have a new offensive coordinator. They're giving him the ball. His running, his first and second quarter, he had 70 yards rushing before halftime. And that rushing attack and him being able to open up like that really opened up the passing game for Derek Carr. You could see it real time. He had like 3 different rushes in a row. That was like 15 yards, 17 yards, 9 yards. And then I know that at like the start of one of the drives, right, he had like a 17-yard rush. Then they hit play action, and then they hit Rashid Shaheed for a 60-yard touchdown. So that's one of those things where it's like Alvin Kamara is such a difference maker, running the ball and also just catching the ball out of the backfield. It was so exciting to watch for them to actually just give him the ball and let him produce. Like I feel like the last 2 years where he's been down, he's been in the league 7 years and he's made 5 Pro Bowls. A lot of people don't realize that. He's only missed the Pro Bowl 2 years, and it was the past 2 years where they had just a horrible offensive coordinator. But you could see him real time opening up that pass game for the Saints and Derek Carr just had to hit easy throws. He wasn't being forced to, you know, hit it within like, you know, a pocket, or like, you know, he wasn't having to hit back shoulder throws or anything. No, he was just, you know, like hit it on the dot, like those Brock Purdy throws that Purdy just needs to, you know, get to, which was exciting to watch. And, you know, Kamara had 70 yards before halftime. He got a rushing touchdown. After that, I mean, it was a blowout. He didn't even play the fourth quarter, and a couple of his touches after that were just running out the clock too. So I feel like his just box scoring was just amazing. Like, you know, there was more production than the box score actually shows. And on defense, Joe Woods, who's their defensive coordinator, did a really great job disguising that defense. Alontae Taylor, he did a lot of corner blitzes. Alontae Taylor ended up with like 3 sacks as a corner in that game. So that was pretty hype. but yeah, that was. I mean, it was just an exciting game to watch
Alvin Kamara fantasy owners, as I am one of them. It was a great Sunday, let me tell you.
as well. Hmm.
Okay, getting into the next game, obviously we have your beautiful, glorious Pittsburgh Steelers winning 18-10 versus Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, Kirk Cousins, 2 interceptions, 155 yards, 1 touchdown. I'll let you take this one over.
I mean, this game went exactly the way I predicted it. I believe I said, if the Steelers score within 17 to 21 points, I think they win this game. And if the Falcons score over 20 points, they win this game. Final score 18-10. If the Falcons would have scored 20 points, they would have won the game. Um, Watching this game, man, just like the first drive, it's frustrating watching Justin Fields like head a team throw the ball. Obviously, like, he can get yards on the ground too. I saw him take a couple of like very questionable sacks, just kind of scrambling out of the pocket. George Pickens 8. I mean, George Pickens, he had an offensive pass interference towards the beginning of the game that was like 45 yards. That I don't think was a little bit of a push, but I don't think it warranted an offensive pass interference. That was a 45-yard reception. He ended with 6 receptions for 85 yards. If he had the 45-yard reception, that would have been 130. He also had a catch too, where he caught it, he fell down, and the officials called him down by touch, but he wasn't actually down. He gained another 10 yards after that play. I think if those two, I think the refs were just horrible this game in general. If those 2 plays, if the offensive pass interference wasn't called, if George Pickens, they gave him the extra 10 yards after he fell down and wasn't actually touched, he would be leading. He would have led the first week in receiving yards.
Let me just say something real quick. George Pickens, okay? The one thing Justin Fields did do right was get George Pickens the ball, right? And George Pickens was making catch after catch after catch against AJ Terrell, the newly signed, highly touted defensive back. And some of these catches he was making was absolutely just remarkable. The first catch of the game that he had, I believe it was the first catch, against AJ Terrell on like a 3rd and 8. Justin Fields threw behind him. Boom, catches it, turns his body, doesn't let it get, just strong hands, dominant player, and he was, like you said, the X factor. He put on a case for him to be on track to become a top 10, top 12 receiver by the end of the year, because what he did against that type of team, I know defensively Atlanta, you don't know what we're going to get yet, but AJ Terrell followed him 75% of that game, and he absolutely torched him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, the defense too for the Steelers, they played so well. I feel like more of it was just
TJ Watt
first game coming back for Kirk Cousins. I know that they had a fumble earlier in the game to kind of start out, and then Kirk Cousins obviously threw 2 interceptions to Dante Jackson, who's the guy that we traded Deontay Johnson for. And then Deshaun Elliott, who was, the safety signing that we had in the offseason. The defense played really well. I feel like watching them, I didn't think they were playing as well as I thought. Patrick Queen, non-factor. He didn't do anything. He had, I think, 2, maybe 3 tackles the whole game. I'm kind of like panicking now because I heard a lot of just Ravens fans on Twitter and in general talking about how Roquan Smith just made Patrick Queen good because of just, the attention that's drawn to Roquan Smith in the second level when teams are trying to block. And just watching Patrick Queen, I feel like he was just getting pushed around. He wasn't shedding blocks. He wasn't really doing anything. Peyton Willis, who's our rookie 3rd round pick, who's exciting to watch. I think he played better than Patrick Queen, and he had more tackles too. So it was just an interesting game to watch in general. TJ Watt obviously played really well. He should have had another sack. They called
offsides, right?
Offside, yeah, when he literally timed it absolutely perfectly, and it was a strip sack. He had a fumble recovery. He had 2 tackles for loss, one of those including a sack at the end of the game to seal the game and for us to win. But, I mean, as a Steelers fan, I'm happy that we won this game. It was kind of a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth because going forward, I feel like they need to pass the ball more. Najee did pretty well. He had 70 yards rushing on 20 carries, though. It wasn't very, it's not really productive to have 70 yards on 20 carries, but he was doing well when the line was actually blocking. He was also there out of the backfield. But I feel like the only person that literally had any yards receiving was George Pickens and then a little bit of Pat Freiermuth. Other than that, no other wide receiver Van Jefferson had a catch for 1 yard. Calvin Austin had a catch for 7 yards. Everything else was a running back or tight end. George Pickens was the only wide receiver who had more than 7 yards receiving. That's not going to be viable for success in the NFL. They need to figure out a way to, incorporate other people into the pass game, whether it's Cordero Patterson or someone else. They just need to figure it out. And the Falcons defense, they played us pretty well. Matt Judon had a half a sack, and Grady Jarrett had a sack and a half, who are their kind of two big guys. Jesse Bates, he had a couple of really great tackles, covering guys in just the flats and things like that. But I feel like I'm happy as a Steelers fan. Oh, also Ray McCloud too for the Falcons. Shout out to him, former Steeler. Ray McCloud led their team in receiving, which was pretty crazy to think of. I think he's listed as their number 3 or 4 wide receiver on the depth chart. Drake London absolutely clamped the whole game. Darnell Mooney kind of clamped too. He had 1 reception in the middle of the game there. And then Kyle Pitts, obviously, he caught the touchdown. But other than that, there wasn't really any production. And we held Bijan to under 70 yards rushing. But yeah, I feel like the Steelers defense, it went how I thought it was going to be. If we hold them under 20 points, we win. If we score between 17 to 21, we win the game. So, just as a Steeler fan, knowing how Steelers games go and just, how the Steelers are in general, not a single touchdown scored, 6 field goals. Chris Boswell's the GOAT. Chris Boswell is my X factor. 6 field goals, and 3 of them were over 50 yards. He was the first kicker in NFL history, which is crazy stat. I figured more people would, but he's the first kicker in history to go 6 for 6 and to have 3 of those be over 50 yards.
Shout out to him. Hell yeah. To be honest, when you said 6 field goals for the Steelers, I didn't put it together. And then I just looked at it right now, and you said
every
6
single
field goals.
One of our
I didn't. I had no idea. I promise you, I had no idea. I don't know. I just didn't put it together. But that's crazy. Oh yeah. Wow. Uh-huh. But listen, Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, again, did not live up to the expectations, but I think they're going to be a team that just have to get some reps together. Kirk Cousins missed a lot of the offseason, a lot of OTAs, a lot of training camp, didn't play in the preseason due to the fact that he's coming off his Achilles injury, so we don't know what we're going to get from him. But I just think TJ Watt and the pressure this defense brought was just enough to make Kirk Cousins uncomfortable, and none of these young guys stepping up. I still think Drake London's a guy where you could throw him the ball and he'll make a tough catch. Like, that's kind of how he plays. That's his style of football. So I'm definitely interested to see how that plays out going forward. Bijan Robinson, I thought he had a hell of a game for what was happening with his quarterback and all that. Kyle Pitts again somehow was wide open for the only touchdown of this game, and then other than that was quiet as hell. I didn't see him at all, right? And for someone who has him on his fantasy team and is bought in, I'll take the touchdown, but I would love to see some more yards, some more involvement here, because I still ended up with 9.5 points. But yeah, listen, I'm completely with you with the Justin Fields situation. Have to get more people involved. I get his running aspect, obviously helps that rush offense as total. His ability to run the ball is something else a defense has to worry about. But again, once you start getting to these better teams defensively, right, with better offenses as well, that are clicking, you definitely need a quarterback that's going to be able to keep up and continue to score, continue to move the chains, because winning by 6 field goals is not sustainable. Like you said, you have to get in the end zone, you have to score, and you have a couple playmakers who can do that for you. George Pickens, Najee Harris. You've got some players, even Jalen Warren, who wasn't that involved this game. He's still somebody that can do that for you, and you have a great tight end as well. So we'll definitely see how this goes again. I
want to throw out there too, just as a Steelers fan, I know there's not a lot of people who know about this, but the Steelers just re-signed Terrell Edmunds. He was the Steelers' first-round pick, I think, in 2018 or 2019, somewhere around there. He was considered a bust. Obviously, we could have got him in the 3rd round or whatever, but a lot of people are hating on the signing of Terrell Edmunds. I absolutely love it. I love the pick because Minkah Fitzpatrick's best career years were when Terrell Edmunds was our starting strong safety. And the reason because of this is because Terrell Edmunds could fit that hybrid linebacker safety role, and he came up and he made a ton of tackles, and he was a great run support safety, and it allowed Minkah to not have to be in the box, and it allowed him to kind of patrol the secondary and read quarterback's eyes, whether it's quarterback coverages or just dropping back in cover 3 or cover 4. He was there. He was getting those interceptions and those turnovers and everything like that. Deshaun Elliott obviously had an interception this first game. He was making way too many tackles. He had 4 tackles. He ended with 4 tackles. Isn't that much, but he was doing a lot more run support than I wanted him to, just because Patrick Queen wasn't doing anything in that second level for the linebackers. And it was kind of alerting for me. Deshaun Elliott is not a guy that should be coming down and making tackles, but Terrell Edmunds is that guy who's, he's thicker. He's one of those safeties that can hit. He's a tackling safety. And the signing, I mean, personally, if I was the Steelers, I would start him day one. That's the guy that I wanted them to sign in the offseason as a free agent instead of Deshaun Elliott. And I'm really happy that they ended up getting Terrell Edmunds. A lot of Steelers fans really don't like that we signed Terrell Edmunds, but it's an absolute win. It's an absolute W signing. And if you have ball IQ, you would know why the Steelers signed him and why he's going to get some playing time coming soon.
Yeah, and then Minka's one of those guys. He's like a Derwin James for me. Like they do everything, right? And to see me, but I also think Minka's best that when he gets to play that true free safety role and just roam around and make fucking plays, which is something that now he gets to do and he's been doing, right? So big shout out to him. Getting into the next game, we have the Miami Dolphins winning 20-17 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did you have Miami? Because I know I
did have Miami.
I picked Jacksonville, and these motherfuckers, man. Listen, this was the for about what? Let me see. How long they have the lead for? For about 3 quarters. I was correct. I was correct on the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to win this game. And then the fourth quarter, here comes Miami and winning with 2 field goals. And I just can't believe it, man. I mean, Trevor Lawrence didn't have the greatest of games, but he only threw the ball 21 times, 12 for 21, 161 yards, and a touchdown. You were sacked 3 times, right? Tank Bigsby, big shout out to him coming through, running the ball. Yeah, I mean, I heard big things about him last year coming in. Yeah, like I heard big things from him coming in last year. He was hiding behind ETN. ETN was slow to start the game off, right?
And then a fumble too.
Yeah, and that's exactly where everything changed. I'm a Travis Etienne fantasy homeowner as well. Player owner as well. So watching him fumble on the goal line when he was about to walk in for a 15-yard touchdown, trust me, I was losing it, all right? And the fact that the Miami came after this and was able to come through with the victory absolutely hurts my soul, right? As much as I hate Miami and don't believe in believe in Trevor Lawrence in this team, but huge shout out to Brian Thomas Jr. I think he looked like the best player on this Jacksonville team, on a consistency level. I mean, that the throw that Trevor Lawrence made to Brian Thompson Jr. was absolutely insane, right? And I seen everybody on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, this is what it feels like to watch a $55 million quarterback do what he's supposed to do. And I was like, hell yeah, man, that was nostalgic. That was beautiful, right? So huge shout out to him. Big shout out to Josh Allen today as well. He brought his game. I thought he played very well. But, I mean, listen, somehow Tua Tagovailoa threw for 338 yards, but only scored 1 touchdown, only scored 20 points, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Obviously, a lot of this was second half production. Later in this half, I mean, Tyreek Hill's touchdown, as much as I hate the guy, was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just made everybody look silly and still was unable to get caught. Like, his speed is obviously second level, and then pairing him up with Jalen Waddle, who, shout out to him, another fantasy player of mine, 5 receptions, 109 yards. The biggest player to me that helped this Miami team rally has got to be Devon Achane to me. I mean, listen, I know rushing the ball didn't do great, 10 carries, 24 yards, but 7 receptions for 76 yards, I felt like really helped this team, obviously, later in the second half to rally this comeback. Defensively, I mean, again, I'm not really too high on this defense. I don't think anybody stuck out for me. Calais Campbell played a big point. I'm going to give it to Javon Holland, goal line fumble. I mean, coming in there and just throwing that right punch, and then making it fall out. There was definitely the game changing. That's when you really seen the energy change in that stadium. And for the first time, you actually thought the Dolphins had a chance to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I think this Dolphins team, I thought there were going to be a lot more points scored than there actually were. For the Jaguars, first off, Trevor Lawrence, box score watching doesn't look great, but I feel like he had a lot of really good throws. The Miami secondary is just really great. You have to take into account that they have Javon Holland, they have Jalen Ramsey, who's obviously the highest paid corner in the NFL. They have Jordan Poyer, who just came from the Bills, who was, I'm pretty sure, an All-Pro at one point, and Kendall Fuller, who's very, very good as well from the Bears a while ago. But you just have to take that into account. I wouldn't be too mad. They have a really good secondary. They have a really good defense in general. But I mean, ETN needs to get involved more. I feel like the 12 carries for 44 yards. Obviously, Tank Bigsby was there to kind of clean up the mess, but they needed more out of ETN, just out of the backfield and receiving the ball too. Jalen Ramsey absolutely clamped up Christian Kirk. I had Christian Kirk in one of my fantasy leagues, and he only had one catch the whole day, and he's their number one wide receiver. Also, Evan Ingram too, no production at all whatsoever. He only had one reception for 5 yards the whole day. Trayvon Walker, though, a bright spot for the Jaguars. Obviously, he was the number one overall pick a couple seasons ago. A lot of people calling him a bust. He had 2 sacks this game. One of them was a crazy, like he sacked Tua, but he kind of he dove at him and his helmet hit Tua's foot, and Tua kind of he just fell over. But I'll say this: box score watching this Dolphins offense, it's very misleading. Because I feel like every year the Dolphins are bailed out by huge chunk plays. So if you take out the 80-yard touchdown pass from Tyreek, he only had 6 receptions for 50 yards. He was getting clamped at the beginning of the game. If you take out Jalen Waddle's 63-yard catch, right, that's 40 yards receiving on 4 catches, right? So that's huge chunk plays. And if you take out Devin Achan's 40-yard reception, right, on that one catch, he only has 36 yards receiving, right? So those 3 chunk plays, right? You take those out, that's 180 yards passing, right? You take out 180 yards passing from those huge chunk plays from Tua's stats, he's at 150 yards passing. So it's always, if you want to beat the Dolphins, those huge chunk plays, if you hold those to a minimum, you win the game. The Dolphins always get bailed out by those huge plays, especially when their run offense is so god-awful, like how it was this game. I mean, 10 carries, 24 yards for HN. Obviously, he got that touchdown. But Raheem Mostert, 6 carries, 9 yards. Are you kidding me? Jeff Wilson, 5 carries, 26 yards, which is a lot better. But obviously, he's their third guy. But like I said, I mean, it's very misleading. The Dolphins box score is very misleading. I feel like their defense did really, really well against the Jaguars. And that Jaguars defense, I feel like they did really well too. I wouldn't be mad if I was them. Josh Hines-Allen, he didn't really do much. He didn't have a sack. He didn't have a tackle for loss or anything. But other than those huge chunk plays, I feel like they did pretty well. And I wouldn't be mad if I'm, the Jaguars team. I feel like, the Dolphins made huge plays when it counted. So that's kind of just my takeaway from the game. The Dolphins eat this one out.
Yeah, and the Jags just not scoring on that one touchdown literally would have put them up 24-7, and it would have been the dagger right before half. Hell no. But getting into our next game is going to be the Houston Texans playing the Indianapolis Colts, 29-27. And one of the biggest stats that I do want to point out here, because this just kind of tells the whole game basically, was the time of possession. Obviously, you had the Houston Texans 40 minutes time of possession, and the Indianapolis Colts 20 minutes time of possession, which to me kind of tells the tale of both halves and both teams. Because I mean, listen, as exciting as AR was and disappointing Jonathan Taylor was, I expected more from him. But Anthony Richardson was just a big play waiting to happen. That's exactly what happened. I mean, listen, 9 for 19, 212 and 2 touchdowns and an interception. But I mean, you had a 60-yard touchdown to Alec Pierce, a 54-yard touchdown to Ashton Doolin. You missed Adonai Mitchell on 2 long, clearly would have been 60-yard touchdown plays. You missed them, right? You missed them twice, which could have just added to that total, right? But obviously, you want to see Anthony Richardson clean up the efficiency, be more efficient as a quarterback, but clearly the talent is there. Clearly his ability to make plays is there. This is a very highly explosive offense. Like I said, two 60-plus yard touchdowns this game. So huge shout out to them. I mean, defensively, again, my winner is going to go to Kenny Moore. I mean, that's always been my guy for this Indianapolis Colts team. I love him. One of the best nickel guys in football, and one of the most underappreciated, I would say, at the cornerback position. But, I mean, listen, the Houston Texans has played perfect football. I mean, listen, you did give up 4 sacks, but, I mean, C.J. Stroud, 24 for 32, 234, 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon was the bull horse. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
30 carries, 159, 5.3 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Nico Collins did his thing on 117 yards. Stephon Diggs, as much as I hate him for taking away my precious Tank Dell's touchdowns. 6 receptions, 33 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So huge shout out to him.
Not very productive.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, this is definitely a Houston Texans team. If they don't settle for 3 field goals, this team could be winning by 20 in this game. This is one of those things where you settle for too many field goals, and you just didn't convert every time on third down and things like that. But again, I think this Houston Texans team clearly has one of the best offenses of football. CJ Stroud is still that guy. Joe Mixon, if he's playing like this, you can sign me up for the Houston Texans to be a fucking force this year.
Yeah, I mean, I love this game. I love that it was a close game throughout. I feel like if I'm the Colts, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm really excited about Anthony Richardson, man. Like, there were a couple, like that bomb touchdown to Alec Pierce was just beautiful. It was so beautiful to watch. Obviously, we want to see more out of JT. The Texans defense is really good. They've obviously upgraded that defense. Their front 7 are just disgusting, and that secondary is really, really great too with Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie. But I mean, my X factor for the Colts, I feel like really slept on Alec Pierce. He's obviously, I think he's the wide receiver 4 there. I would say Michael Pittman's number 1, Josh Downs number 2, Adonai Mitchell 3, and then Alec Pierce 4. We didn't see any of Josh Downs. Josh Downs didn't
Alec
even
Pierce is great.
Yeah. And I whenever Alec Pierce is one of those guys where I'll box score watch like last year too, and he'll just have like 1 catch for 40 yards or 2 catches for 60 yards and stuff like that. So he's, got that big play potential, but I mean, he had 125 receiving yards from Anthony Richardson's 212 yards passing. So that shows you how important he was to that offense. Going over and also the Colts got after the Texans too. I mean, like that Colts defense was probably gassed. I mean, the Texans had the ball for 45 minutes. That Colts defense was probably gassed, but they still got after CJ Stroud and they still played relatively well. You had a sack and a half from DeForest Buckner, and I think Kwity Paye also got a sack in there too. So it's 2 of your bigger guys actually producing there. But I mean, the Texans offense, they got the names now. Joe Mixon, they have a good run game. Even if you don't have a crazy game by CJ Stroud now, you can lean on Joe Mixon to rush for 160 yards. And it was consistent too. It's not like he had a huge play of 50 yards. His longest run of the day was 13 yards. So everything was just consistent. And it was absolutely beautiful to watch. Nico Collins, obviously still that wide receiver 1, which a lot of people were saying, is Nico the wide receiver 1 or is it Tank Dell or Stephon Diggs? No, it is Nico Collins. 117 yards receiving. He had a beautiful double covered catch too down the field. Shout out to on this defense too. Shout out Henry Tuatua. We played against him in high school. He played for De La Salle. I remember when we were game filming him. That was funny. It was just cool to watch guys that we've seen in high school play in the NFL now. But Stingley played his mind out. That Texans secondary just did really well, other than just the chunk plays. Big shout
out to Kalen Bullock, USC alum. Fight on, baby, with a pick that game. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
the only pick of the game.
I wanted to see the Texans get after Anthony Richardson more. I feel like 2 sacks just isn't adequate for that team. I was hoping at least 4 or 5. Obviously with Will Anderson and then the new addition of Danielle Hunter. I just feel like they didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback, so we'll see if that changes throughout the year. But yeah, I mean, this was an exciting game to watch. Obviously, the 2 young guns, and it'll be exciting to watch Anthony Richardson the rest of the year because he did a lot better than I thought he was going to do in this game. So I'm really happy for him, and I'd be excited as a Colts fan. I wouldn't take this as a bad loss. I mean, the Texans are a powerhouse, so.
And then going into the Denver Broncos versus the Seattle Seahawks, obviously this was a very one-sided game, even though the score says differently. I mean, listen, Bo Nix struggled in his debut, 26 for 42, 138, and 2 interceptions. Their running game was basically non-existent, which hurts me to hear that about Javonte Williams, because I'm still very high on him. Receiving-wise, again, just nobody seemed to make plays. And this was a game I didn't watch much, because after the first couple picks, I was kind of like, this is just going to be a blowout, right? Defensively, the Broncos look good early on. I mean, listen, Kenneth Walker had 6 carries, I believe, for like 2 yards at one point. And then all of a sudden, he just came out the second half and just broke everything open, like 15-yard carry after 15-yard carry. And then obviously ended the game with 100 yards and 1 touchdown. Geno Smith played outside of that first pick on the second play of the game, played pretty good football, 18 for 21, 171, had a rushing touchdown of himself. A big game for Tyler Lockett as well. I would definitely hope to see more of JSN, especially as someone that's invested in him. Fantasy-wise, he's definitely on my team, on my bench I'm holding on to. But, I think this was just a game where they found out that they could run the ball, and once they got it figured out, they just continued to run the ball until they can close out the game. So hopefully I see more from JSN. That's definitely somebody I'm looking forward to seeing develop into a great player. And then Devon Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. I just absolutely love that that cornerback duo. That's one of my favorite. That is my favorite cornerback duo in the NFL. I just love the energy they play with, and I think they're both great at what they do.
Yeah. It was a really disappointing game for Bo Nix. One of the huge things why we say preseason production does not matter, right? It's a lot different when you get into the actual games. We learned from Kenny Pickett last year. We'll learn from Bo Nix right now. And Caleb Williams too in the preseason too. But this Denver offense just needs to establish the run game. They had nothing going for them in the run game. And Cortland Sutton was kind of like, a no-show. He had like 40 yards receiving on 40 catches. And then Josh Reynolds too, who was their new acquisition from the Lions. He played pretty well. He
had garbage.
Receiving. Yeah. He's garbage. But they just need to figure out their identity on offense. It will be interesting watching these next couple of weeks, because I think if Bo Nix kind of replicates how bad he played this week and next week and maybe the week after, there might be a call for Zach Wilson, because Zach Wilson was another guy that did pretty solid in the preseason. And they might just want to see, get a sense of his ability if Bo Nix can't really contribute. And then they have Jarrett Stidham, I guess, as like a safe option. But for me, it's either Bo Nix or Zach Wilson, because you know what you're getting in Jarrett Stidham. But on the defense, the bright spot for me, that defense played so well against the Seahawks for how many times, how many turnovers there were. And just, the time of possession too, I think was pretty lopsided. But Pat Surtain, I think he's the best corner in the NFL. I would honestly I think I'd take him over Jairi. I think they're 1A and 1B interchangeably. I think they're both really, really good. I don't think Jalen Ramsey's, he's paid obviously is the best. I don't think he is the best. Pat Surtain locked down DK. DK had 3 catches for 29 yards. He was a complete non-factor. He didn't do anything this game. And going forward too, it's going to be really interesting seeing that Geno Smith first drive interception, or the interception in the first quarter. In the back of my head, I was like, oh, when is it Sam Howell time? You know what I mean? Because their competition for quarterback was pretty close, and Sam Howell, he produces those numbers. And if they can't get DK the ball, if they can't figure it out, you know what I mean? Obviously they could rely on Kenneth Walker this game, right? But on games they can't rely on K9 to rush for over 100 yards and a touchdown. Is Geno going to be able to get the ball downfield, because he's aging? I don't know if he's regressing or not. We will see. But it'll be exciting. I think Sam Howell will see some playing time maybe later down in the season if the Seahawks lose a couple of games and if Geno isn't producing. So that'll be fun to watch. But another just the kind of like low key guy that I want to throw out there that's on that Seahawks defense too is Boye Mafe. He had a really great season last year. He had one of their only, I think maybe the Seahawks had like a couple sacks, and one of them was Boye Mafe. I feel like he's extremely underrated, and I love him. I love him on that defense, and I think he's extremely underrated. But yeah, that's kind of just my takeaway of this game.
Yeah, and then with Geno Smith and Sam Howell, I love both of them. Like, truly, I think Sam Howell just got a bad rap in Washington due to the interceptions and the bad situation he was in, offensively, defensively, obviously. But Geno Smith, I'm a fan of, but clearly his numbers haven't reciprocated from that year one where he made the playoffs, right? We haven't seen that same season from him again. So that's going to be a huge question. And I think if the Seahawks get to the point where they see Sam Howell in there, he could definitely win the spot. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Howell gets a chance to play and then all of a sudden it's his job over there in Seattle. But getting into the next game of the week, we have the Dallas Cowboys winning 33-17 versus the worst quarterback in the NFL, Deshaun Watson. I mean, listen, dude, 24 for 45, 169, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, was sacked 6 times. Absolutely fucking horrid. Okay, this was got to be one of the toughest games I was forcing myself to watch. The Raiders, like I'm sitting there, I got both games on, yada yada, I'm keeping up with all the stuff, and then the Raiders game finishes early, so I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, let me watch a comeback. Let me watch, Deshaun Watson show some life. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, I just can't. Listen. The crazy thing was that back when Deshaun Watson made the AFC Championship game and blew a 28-point lead to Patrick Mahomes, I referred to him as the best quarterback in the NFL. I said he was better than Patrick Mahomes, not better than Brady, obviously, but I said he was better than Patrick Mahomes. I said that, and I said it with my chest. He sits out a year and then comes to Cleveland and does this, and now I just look like I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. And it bothers me because, I loved him in college. I was a big fan, but this is horrible, right? I mean, again, huge shout out to the Cowboys. They got out to an early lead and just kind of played conservative and then trusted their defense wasn't going to allow Deshaun Watson to score any points, and they were correct in this game. I mean, listen, this was a very one-sided game. And then also the man of the hour is obviously Dak Prescott getting paid his 4-year, $240 million extension, a $60 million quarterback. He broke all the guaranteed quarterback guarantees, the highest paid quarterback, the highest paid guarantees for a quarterback as well. So he is now the highest paid quarterback in football. Do I think this is still a good move for Dallas? I'm going to stick with what I said. No, not so much. I'm still not a fan of them paying him $60 million to play quarterback. Obviously, this takes away the possibility of him becoming a free agent this upcoming offseason and possibly going to the Raiders. But you know what? I didn't like that idea anyways. So here we are. Go ahead.
I mean, those massage tables took all the talent out of Deshaun Watson.
Oh my God.
Man, it's so crazy just watching someone that was so talented for, those couple of years, those few years, just to digress this incredibly. And, when we were making our picks and our predictions last week, I literally said I was taking the Cowboys because that Browns defense is so stout. I just think that Deshaun Watson is not him. I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to be that X factor that's going to bring the Browns points just on the board, and without Nick Chubb, you know what I mean? Like when Nick Chubb's there, obviously you can kind of hand him the ball and give him some of the load to open up the pass offense. But you've got Jerome Ford, and obviously he had a rushing touchdown. He had an game on the ground. He had like less than 4 yards a carry, but Watson's not him, and you can't let him throw the ball almost 50 times in a game and expect to win. Both of these defenses are extremely stout. Obviously, the Cowboys put up 33 points on the board, but the Browns did a very good job on defense. Dak didn't even throw for over 100, he didn't throw over 200 yards. He threw 180 yards, and that's a W in my book. Dak usually throws for 300 plus. Ground game, I mean, Zeke didn't even rush for over like 30 or 40 yards. They held CeeDee Lamb under 100 yards receiving, but I mean, credit the Cowboys. They just got points on the board from those turnovers. They turned them into points. And then also shout out Kevontae Turpin too, who did very well. He had a punt return touchdown. The only bright spot for me on this Cleveland Browns, I'm actually going to throw a wild card out there. The only the kind of bright spot that I have on this Browns team, besides anyone on their defense, was Jalen Darden. He's a former Buccaneer. He was their return man. He did really well returning the ball off punts. He had like 5 punt returns for like 70-something yards, and he had a really nice 30-yard punt return to break it off and to give them good field position. He was doing really well in the return game the whole day, kind of trying to just put the Browns into good good field position for them to kind of get some points on the board. But then Deshaun Watson just loved to give it right back to him. So we'll see. I know the Cowboys defense is really stout, and the Browns defense is really stout too. So I can see both of these teams doubling their offensive production next week against, depending on what team they're obviously playing. But this is 2 kind of powerhouse defenses against themselves, and unfortunately, the Browns got the short end of the stick because their quarterback, is one of the 3 blind mice. So.
Yeah, and then big shout out to Jalen Darden because he won the Bolitnikoff his last year in college. So I just want a big shout out, North Texas alum. You feel me? But getting into the next game is going to be the Washington Commanders losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm going to say this was a good game for Tampa Bay. They really showed that they are about their business. Again, they ruined Jaden Daniels' debut. I picked the Commanders, I believe, in an upset in this one. So big shout out to Baker Mayfield for showing us what he's about. But Jaden Daniels, I mean, he showed what dynamic of a threat he is athletically, dual threat wise. I mean, 16 carries, 88 yards for 2 touchdowns. He was their best rushing production this game. Austin Eckler had himself an okay game. I mean, listen, 17 for 24, 184 yards. It's not bad. It's not bad at all, right? You were offense was very stagnant. You weren't converting on third downs, right? So I get that. So you fell behind early, right? You had to run the ball, just go pass heavy a lot. But to me, the biggest thing was not getting Terry McLaurin involved. I mean, because he is a very consistent receiver. I mean, he's been 1,100 yard receiver since he's came into the league. He's been great, very underappreciated. One of my favorite guys since he's came into the league. So you definitely got to get him involved earlier to help out Jaden Daniels, right? Because you just traded away Jahan Dotson, right? So you need to get somebody involved, and that's the best player you got right now. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be touching the ball more. I mean, your 2 leading receivers can't both be running backs, especially being Brian Robinson Jr. Like that just can't be a thing. So hopefully we see more from Terry McLaurin going forward. But listen, huge shout out to Baker Mayfield, right? Obviously, listen, 24 for 30, 289, 4 touchdowns. This guy came to fucking play, and I'm happy for him. Listen, I mean, Bucky Irving was their leading rusher, who I think this is going to be a very interesting story for Rachaad White and see how that 2-back combo goes going forward. But I mean, Rachaad White, 75 receiving yards as well. He played a huge factor in this game. Chris Godwin looked like he's back in Chris Godwin form. And then Mike Evans doing Mike Evans-like things. I mean, again, just a very underappreciated receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a fucking monster year this year. Just got paid 5 receptions, 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen McMillan out of Washington, drafted. I'm not sure when he got drafted. I think the 3rd round. But 1 reception, 32 yards, and a touchdown. I love that for them. If they can get somebody else to perform in the receiving department, in the receiving game, that's just great for them going forward. Obviously, I'm an absolute huge Antoine Winfield Jr. fan. I think he played a phenomenal game today. I was very surprised that the Buccaneers played this well defensively, specifically that secondary. I mean, you lost some pieces this offseason. Carlton Davis, right? You lost some pieces. So I wasn't sure how it was going to be going forward, right? But again, you answered, right? And I get it. Rookie quarterback debut game, that you kind of had that rookie advantage at home, right? But I still think this defense performed for what they needed to do. They got the job done. Offense was flying, right? And when you have Baker Mayfield playing like he did, I mean, this team is a fun team to watch, right? A very underdog-ish like team, but very fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just watching this game in general, Jaden Daniels did so well for his rookie quarterback debut. The problem that happened with this game is that the Commanders went down so fast in points that they couldn't establish the run game because they needed to start throwing the ball. And once Jaden Daniels started dropping back in the pocket and being forced to throw the ball, obviously a lot of his rushes came off of scrambles, things like that, maybe some design quarterback run plays in there. But when a team goes down drastically so fast, you need to pass the ball and you need to get points back fast too. And that's kind of what happened to Washington in their offense. They only ran the ball 14 times with running backs this whole game. And their top 2 receivers were both running backs. They're running backs, which in my opinion, if I'm the Commanders offensive coordinator, right, I'm letting Jaden Daniels throw the ball equally the amount that he was this game. I think 24 to 28 passes is perfect range for Jaden. They need to give the ball to Austin Eckler more. Austin Eckler is an absolute star. He was great with the Chargers. They obviously implemented him in the receiving game, but he only had 2 carries. And I feel like Brian Robinson, you know what you're getting with Brian Robinson. You're getting, that stout kind of like bully running back who's going to get a few yards on like short down situations. Austin Eckler is extremely dynamic. He's one of those guys that can get big plays, whether it's catching the ball out of the backfield or running it in between the tackles. I feel like Jaden Daniels, I didn't watch the game, so I don't know how he kind of distributed the ball but it's like seeing all the running backs having the most receiving yards and receptions kind of worries me a little bit if he was checking down the ball a little too much, if he was kind of a little scared to extend the ball down the field. But
that's normal at young QBs.
Yeah, exactly. And like seeing like, you know, their actual receivers, Luke McCaffrey, Terry, Zacchaeus, Jamison Crowder, they all just kind of had like they all had under 20 yards receiving, which is kind of like, you know, the big question mark here. But I mean, also with Jaden too, he fumbled the ball 3 times. They didn't lose it, but he fumbled the ball 3 times, which is a little kind of scary as a Washington fan. But I mean, it was a great debut for Jaden Daniels. Obviously, I hyped him up like crazy before this game. I thought he was going to be the rookie of the week. Thought he was going to throw for over 300, maybe rush for over 100. Obviously, it kind of toned down a little bit. It came back down to earth. But I mean, for their defense too, Bobby Wagner, even in his mid 30s, still doing Bobby Wagner things, double-digit tackles, 3 tackles for loss. I know for a fact that Washington secondary, people are calling for Emmanuel Forbes' head. Top 5, obviously. Top 5 pick, super like highly touted pedigree prospect, and he's just getting burnt in the secondary. And I just know so many, like in every single comment section of any Washington post, it's everyone just calling for Forbes' head. And their lone sack, they need to get after the quarterback a lot more. Their lone sack of the day came from Mr. former Raider himself, Clelin Ferrell, which is really, really funny. But
he's terrible. Yeah, he was terrible too.
Going over to the Buccaneers. Man, Baker Mayfield proved me wrong. I bet he proved a lot of people wrong this week.
I did. Yep.
And me. Thankfully, in one of my paid leagues, I actually started him. It's a 2 QB flex league. And I started him at quarterback, and he dropped almost 40 points. So absolute W. Going forward, that run game, it's going to be a bit of a question mark. I would be a little bit suspicious about it, especially if they play a better team. They need to establish the run game. Rachaad White had a 15-yard rush. So take away that one 15-yard rush. He had 14 carries for 16 yards, which is horrid, absolutely horrid. Bucky Irving, thankfully, he provided some support on the ground. But other than that, right, I mean, just the receivers in general, having Mike Evans and having Chris Godwin, really great. And it's a good thing that Baker has those 2 weapons because, I mean, he can absolutely fling it, and he showed it. Rachaad White obviously had a decent amount of receptions and receiving yards out of the backfield, too. He did really well there. Thankfully, that's kind of where his production numbers came from. The only question mark, I think, is they need to get Cade Otton involved more. I'm really high on Cade Otton, their starting tight end. He only had 1 reception for 5 yards. I feel like in more competitive games, they're going to need an out route besides Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, especially against those greater teams that have, you know, a good dual corner kind of combination. They're going to have to give the ball to Cade Otton a lot more, and it'll be exciting to watch that. I feel like their defense played very, very well for, you know, what I thought was going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Cade Otton is one of those guys. He's a solid tight end who should get involved in the offense, at least be a part of it. But if you got McMillan and who was the other guy? Who was the other guy? Who am I thinking of? I can't even remember. But if you have McMillan and somebody else producing receiving wise, I'm okay with it because I get it. Not everybody can get fed in games like this. But for obviously in the future, we'd like to see everyone get him specifically get involved. But getting into the next game, we have the Rams versus the Detroit Lions. Obviously 20-26 overtime game. Shout out David Montgomery, another fantasy guy I have. But I mean, listen, this was early on, you had the Rams looking like a dominant force. They look super good. It looked like Cooper Kupp was back to his peak form, which he did show today. I mean, listen, Cooper Kupp, 14 catches, 110 yards, and 1 touchdown. Shout out to Tyler Johnson for stepping up when Puka Nacua left with an injury. Hopefully he comes back soon. He's on IR for 4 weeks. But, I mean, listen, Kyren Williams, 18 carries, 50 yards, 1 touchdown, did not give you much in the rushing game. The rushing offense in general this game was not that good. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, gave you a couple yards in that category as well. But listen, Matthew Stafford throwing the ball for 50 times is not a recipe for success in my mind, right? Last year, you had Kyren Williams was getting it going, right? Was really running the ball against everybody. And I get it. In a situation like this, we trust Matthew Stafford to do what Matthew Stafford does, and he looked great. Outside of that, INT to end the second half where you could have had points, but you just completely did not see the safety sitting in the middle of the field. But something that we're probably not going to see him do much this year. I thought a good game for Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. I mean, again, this Detroit Lions team didn't look special today. Jared Goff, 217, one touchdown, one INT. David Montgomery, I mean, although his numbers say 17 carries for 91 yards and a touchdown, it was really that overtime. He had 40-something yards before overtime started, and then he became the workhorse and he ended the game. I mean, big run after big run after big run, and he put it away himself. So big shout out to him and this team for able to put it away and close the game, and coming out 1-0 at the end of this. But huge shout out to Jameson Williams. I mean, listen, we've been waiting for him to become involved in this offense. We knew the potential coming out of Alabama, coming out of college, coming off an injury, right? Last year, you get suspended for the gambling issue. Now you finally show that speed and athleticism. And listen, he looked phenomenal today. I mean, listen, he had 1 carry for 13 yards, 5 receptions for 121 yards. He just looked faster than everybody on that field. Like you've seen it. It was clear as day. He looked athletic. He was making big plays, and he had a touchdown of his own. But to me, if you are getting that type of production from Jameson Williams on the nights that Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs is having a quiet night, this can be a very scary team. And if you can put Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, everybody, Sam Laporta, all these guys hitting on the same night, this offense can get very, very scary with how fast Jameson Williams is playing.
Yeah, I feel like just watching this game, the Lions offense was pretty complacent. I mean, we were talking about Jameson Williams and his impact in that kind of wide receiver two role for the Lions was kind of like, that one weak spot of the team. But I mean, that one weak spot showed up. It's the only reason why they probably won the game and they stayed competitive this game. My player of the game for the Rams, obviously besides Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp obviously carried that offense, is Tre'Davious White, a guy who was a former All-Pro for the Bills, and he was one of the best corners in the NFL. Obviously had a couple of seasons where he had career-ending injuries, and then now being the Rams' number 1 corner after they lost Jalen Ramsey a couple of years ago. Being the Rams' number 1 corner, getting picked up, obviously being older, a lot of people kind of down on him. He got a cheap contract, absolutely locking up Amon-Ra this whole game. Amon-Ra ended with 3 receptions for 13 yards. Tre'Davious was blanketing him the whole game, and people forgot how good he was with the Bills when that Bills defense was full of 3 different All-Pros, when they had a more prime Von Miller, Jordan Poyer. There was another safety
Micah
there.
Hyde.
Micah Hyde, yes, Micah Hyde, and then Tre'Davious White too. That defense was absolutely stout. But shout outs to him, man. Props to him. This was definitely a great game for him to kind of just reestablish himself as one of those star corners in the league. And for the Lions, I mean, Jared Goff, I didn't really see much out of him. I wanted them to kind of stretch the ball more down the field. They need to get more dynamic with Amon-Ra on this offense, especially if Tre'Davious White is shadowing him the whole game, trying to get him, in the slot to maybe get a switch, or, trying to find him over the middle of the field, or just, on a hook route or something between zones when they're not actually playing man coverage.
Just getting him the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Moving around the receivers, trying to, hit different, dig routes, whether it's or Texas routes or anything like that, just something over the middle, something with a cut in it, something short, just get him the ball in space and just let him produce, because that's what he does. I mean, he had 6 targets on the game and 3 receptions. Same thing with Jameson Williams. He had 9 targets and 5 receptions. So I wanted to see more out of Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously. Laporta did okay. I felt like I'd obviously want to see more out of him, but thankfully David Montgomery helped this team, and Jameson Williams also kept them in it. And they ended up winning this one for the Lions defense. Aiden Hutchinson got a sack. That secondary played okay. They kind of got air raided. Terrion Arnold, Brian Branch, a couple of really young guys too. Carlton Davis is relatively younger, one of the new additions to that secondary. He almost led the team in tackles just because of the amount of receptions that guys were getting in the secondary. So we'll see how it kind of pans out. I feel like I'm not too worried. I don't think Jared Goff really played any preseason games either. So week 1, I'm kind of taking the lower quarterback situations and the lower quarterback production with a grain of salt. Week 2 and week 3, we'll kind of be able to have a sense of the actual production we'll see throughout the season. So yeah, I think I'm glad the Lions pulled this one out. I'm really rooting for the Lions in the NFC this year just because they're a feel-good story. But yeah, props to Jameson Williams and David Montgomery for this team.
Yeah, and then getting into the last game of the Monday night, yesterday's game, we have the San Francisco 49ers playing the New York Jets, 19-32. San Francisco comes out with the victory here. Like we said before, 6 field goals by not Moses Moody, by Jake Moody. Um, and listen, obviously we were watching this game at the same time. You texting each other play by play. You know, the New York Jets come out here and look absolutely unstoppable on offense that first drive. Garrett Wilson looks amazing. Aaron Rodgers looks fine, looks good. You know what I'm saying? He's moving, he's throwing the ball fine, and they just look unstoppable. And then here comes the New York Jets being the New York Jets and giving us one good drive, you know, to start the year off right. And then the 49ers just dominated the rest of this game. I mean, listen, the questions about this New York Giants team is, can you get good version of Aaron Rodgers for all 18 games? Can he get you to the playoffs? Can he elevate your team? So far, you know, he hasn't shown that, right? He didn't play poorly yesterday, but he didn't play good either, you know? I mean, listen, 167 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. You clearly were trying to feed Breece Hall early on, 16 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown, right? It obviously was not working the way you wanted it to. The offensive line looked okay. It had its moments where, you know, you give some big hits on Rodgers and some sacks, but that's just a great pass rush you're going against and a great defense. Brock Purdy, again, wasn't forced to do anything crazy, right? I mean, 231 yards, 19 completions, 29 attempts. But Jordan Mason, the story of the day, right? The post game interview where he got in trouble for saying that he knew he was going to start on Friday, you know? And then here comes Kyle Shanahan saying, nope, he never knew that. I don't know what he's talking about. And then now Jordan Mason's back. And now Jordan Mason's back saying, nope, I can't even say anything no more. Social media, you're crazy, you know? So big shout out to him. 28 carries for 147 yards, 1 touchdown. He was the workhorse. He was the offense here. And Brandon Ayuk again. I mean, early on, Sauce Gardner was giving him the business. All right, let's not get that twisted. Sauce Gardner was giving in there until Sauce Gardner sat out for a little bit due to an injury, but he was doing his thing. Big shout out to Juwan Jennings, 5 receptions, 64 yards, being the leading receiver on this team. Deebo Samuel did what Deebo Samuel does when the ball was in his hands. He made plays. But I mean, this San Francisco team, although not scoring in the red zone, I'm not too worried, right? Because again, week 1, you take it with a grain of salt. That's a great defense in New York, in the Jets. Outside of that run defense, the rush defense was the biggest red flag for this Jets team. I mean, last year going into this year, you know, still Hassan Reddick is still sitting out. Like, you know, we don't know what's going on. So, you know, obviously you would love to have him in addition to this team. Great secondary, some great defensive lineman pieces, but hopefully they can put it together, because what we've seen for that first drive and that first quarter, you know, really defensively they look good, offensively they look good. Breece Hall looked like that type of back. Garrett Wilson looked like a top 5 receiver. So hopefully they could get more consistent and work on closing out games. Again, I don't think anybody's surprised about this outcome. San Francisco 49ers are the better team. They were the better team. They're more seasoned. They're veterans. They've been in this situation before, and they're the team supposed to get back to the Super Bowl and finish it this time.
Yeah, I mean, just watching the game too in real time, especially the first quarter, and just like, you know, the Brock Purdy only had 20 yards passing in the first quarter, and he was like 2 for 6. That Jets defense was being the Jets defense. Like, everyone was on clamps. Like, it wasn't even like there was like 1 or 2 bad throws by Purdy, but it was like on the money, but the defense was just better. Or like, you know, also Brock Purdy should have had a passing touchdown too that Ayuk dropped on a dive in the end zone. So that was like a perfect pass. But just watching that second drive when the Jets literally just effortlessly against the Niners defense just drove down the field and scored a touchdown. I was like, wow, like that was insane. Like that was one of the drives where I'm like, I haven't seen a drive like that against the Niners defense in a while, maybe since the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And that's obviously Patrick Mahomes. But then after that, it was kind of just like complacent the rest of the time. And credit, I mean, both offensive lines did relatively well. I mean, there were only 3 sacks the whole game. Purdy got sacked twice. Rodgers only got sacked once, but the pressure was there. The first quarter, the first half, Purdy was running for his life outside of that pocket. Like everything was just, he was stepping up in the pocket. He was making good throws and he was just doing well. And this was another one of those games where Brock Purdy just needed to not turn over the ball and he just needed to make the throws. And obviously I think he got 210 yards in 3 quarters. I think that the production was there. The beginning of the game was obviously rough. They started off so slow, and obviously Ayuk dropped that touchdown, but I think Purdy did relatively well. I think obviously outside of Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel was an absolute workhorse this game. I feel like he was touching the ball more than anyone else. Five catches, 54 yards. He ran the ball 8 times for 23 yards and a touchdown too. He was just opening up the middle of the field and giving you that production when Ayuk was getting absolutely clamped. Ayuk obviously was kind of a non-factor, 2 catches, 28 yards. And it's a really feel-good story for Jordan Mason. And kind of just the Niners in general being able to pull out this win without CMC, that defense just being, how good it is. It'll be exciting to watch the team going forward, especially when CMC actually comes back. I think it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate Jordan Mason when CMC is back, because obviously CMC is CMC. He's going to denote most of the carries, but I feel like Jordan Mason's game today is definitely going to warrant some more playing time soon. And then does that mean Jordan Mason's going to get more touches out of the backfield and Deebo's not going to get as many touches out of the backfield? But we'll see.
Or does it mean Christian McCaffrey's a system running back? Oh,
that's also a good point too. That is also a good point.
No, I'm just playing.
People aren't ready.
No, they're not. Christian McCaffrey is dynamic.
Yeah, another thing too. I mean, just talking about that Jordan Mason interview situation, it was kind of frustrating for me because I had CMC in 2 of my fantasy leagues. Thankfully, I was winning by so much that even though Christian McCaffrey didn't play, I still won the game. So I took a 0 at that running back spot and I still won the game. But yeah, I mean, knowing that I didn't even know CMC wasn't playing until literally I stared up at the screen right before the game and it said CMC out. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so, yeah. And then him saying that I've known since Friday. I don't think he wouldn't say that. He wouldn't say that if he didn't 100% know. Obviously, he's 100%. Not going to take, he's not going to take when Kyle Shanahan was like, I told him to be ready and make sure he's ready to, start if he needs to or whatever. No, he's been a backup for the past year and a half or whatever. Right. And CMC's had injuries before. So he's definitely heard the whole, be ready if you need to be ready. No, he said he was ready to start. He said he was told he was going to start Friday. Right. And that's 3 days before Monday. And man, that a lot of people don't understand the problem with that, right? It goes against the injury regulations and reporting rules for the NFL, right? And a huge thing about that too is obviously the betting aspect and the gambling aspect of the NFL. The people who threw bets on either Jordan Mason or CMC as well. Whoever took Jordan Mason over carries or rushing yards, or under carries and under rushing yards. Obviously, they didn't know he was going to start, right? Or if people, took any MC lines and he's just out right before the game starts and they don't get the hefty payout that they made on a parlay or something like that. Or even just the people who buy into fantasy leagues and they weren't able to switch out their running back because they literally said on a Monday night game, CMC's not playing right before the game, right? They can't add anyone in if they don't have Jordan Mason on their bench or a backup running back somewhere on the Jets or the Niners. So that's why it's such a big deal. You know what I mean?
The one thing I will say about that real quick is the Eagles last year with Jalen Hurts, right? We knew something was wrong with him. We heard reports about his knee, but you never put it on the injury report. You didn't want the other team to know, right? Simple as that. Simple as day. But also the Joe Burrow situation. I mean, when he went out there and blew out his elbow, nobody knew anything was wrong with him. He was supposed to be 100% healthy. He was supposed to be fine. The calf was supposed to be 100% fine. And the next thing you know, he's getting off the plane that night in Jacksonville with a little arm sleeve or whatever, compression sleeve or whatever that's supposed to help his elbow, right? And next thing you know, what happened? He hurt his elbow and he missed the entire season. So a lot of teams do it. Is it right? No. But, you just want some sort of advantage against the opposing team.
Yeah.
But with that being said, that was the last game of the 17-game slate. 17 games. I don't even know if there's 17 games. I know there's 17 teams though, but or 17 teams. That's not what I meant either. It's okay. All right. But with that being said, hopefully y'all like today's video. If you're liking the content, make sure to go check us out on Instagram, Young Rich Podcast, TikTok, Young Rich Podcast as well. And if you like talking about collecting cards, collectibles, trading, buying, selling, also that check out Seth's TikTok. The description will be in the description. The link will be in the description below. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, make sure to like and follow the show. Give it a 5-star rating. It helps the algorithm. If you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And with that being said, we out.